The phone call came on a Tuesday evening, just as the sun was dipping below the horizon. My grandfather Harold had passed away peacefully in his sleep. I stood there in my kitchen, unable to speak, feeling the weight of grief pressing down on my chest. Lindsay stood beside me, her hand resting gently on my shoulder. She looked at me with soft eyes and asked her first question. But it was not the question I expected. She asked how much he left me, not if I was okay. Before we begin this story, I would love to know where you are watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below, and if you have ever had someone show their true colors over money, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. What I did not know then was that my grandfather's final gift was not just money. It was the truth about the woman sleeping next to me every night. Let me tell you how a dead man saved my life. I met Lindsay during my junior year of college. She was studying communications, and I was buried in accounting textbooks at a campus coffee shop when she walked up to my table and asked if the seat across from me was taken. I remember thinking she was out of my league. Blonde hair that caught the light just right, a smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. She had this way of making everything feel effortless. She pursued me, which still surprises me when I think about it. I was nobody special. Just a kid from a working-class family in Ohio putting myself through school with part-time jobs at the campus bookstore and weekend shifts at a warehouse. My clothes came from clearance racks. My car had over 150,000 miles on it. But Lindsay acted like I was exactly what she had been looking for. There was one comment she made early on that I should have paid more attention to. We were walking back from dinner one night, and she laughed and said she only dates guys with potential. I took it as a compliment at the time. I thought she saw something in me that I could not see in myself. I believed I was her potential. Looking back now, I understand what she really meant. We got married after 2 years of dating. I could not afford a big wedding, so we had a small ceremony at a local venue with about 40 guests. Lindsay smiled through it all, but I noticed the slight tightness in her expression when she looked around the modest reception hall. She recovered quickly, kissed me, and told me she loved me. I wanted to believe that the size of our wedding did not matter to her. I needed to believe it. My grandfather Harold was a quiet man who lived on a small farm about 2 hours outside of Columbus. When I was a kid, I spent every summer on that farm, helping him with chores, learning how to fix fences and tend to the land. He was not the type to talk much, but when he did speak, his words carried weight. I remember sitting on his porch one evening when I was about 12 years old. He was sipping iced tea and looking out at the fields he had worked his entire life. He turned to me and said something I never forgot. He said the loudest man in the room is usually the poorest. Wealth whispers, son. I did not fully understand what he meant back then. I do now. Harold lived simply. He drove the same beat-up pickup truck for over 20 years. He wore the same pair of boots until they fell apart and then had them resold instead of buying new ones. Everyone in town thought he was just a humble farmer getting by. Nobody knew the truth. What nobody knew was that Harold had been quietly buying farmland for decades. Every time a neighbor fell on hard times or a property came up for sale, Harold would make an offer. He paid cash and never bragged about it. He also started investing in index funds back in the 1970s, putting away small amounts every month with the patience of a man who understood that time was his greatest ally. When Harold passed away, the estate attorney informed me that I was the sole heir. My parents had divorced when I was young, and my father had been estranged from the family for years. Harold left everything to me. The total value of the estate was approximately $2.3 million. I could barely process the number when Mr. Patterson, the estate attorney, said it out loud. Lindsay insisted on coming to the meeting with the attorney. She said we were a team and that she wanted to support me during this difficult time. I appreciated the gesture, or at least I thought I did. But I noticed something during that meeting that planted the first seed of doubt in my mind. Mr. Patterson was explaining the details of the estate when Lindsay started asking questions. She wanted to know how much was in liquid assets. She asked about the timeline for transferring funds. She asked whether there were any restrictions on how the money could be used. Mr. Patterson answered politely, but I caught a subtle hesitation in his voice, a flicker of something in his eyes when he looked at her. When we left the attorney's office, Lindsay's entire demeanor had changed. She was energized, almost giddy. She suggested we celebrate by looking at houses in nicer neighborhoods. She started talking about upgrading our cars, taking a vacation to Europe, finally living the life we deserved. I told her I needed time. I had just lost my grandfather. I wanted to grieve to process what had happened before making any big decisions. Lindsay's face tightened for just a moment before she smoothed it over with a sympathetic nod. She said she understood and that my grandfather would want me to enjoy life. That night she was unusually affectionate. She talked about our future like it was a blank check waiting to be cashed. 3 weeks after the funeral, the hints started becoming demands. Lindsay mentioned one evening that she was thinking about quitting her job at the marketing firm. She said we did not need 2 incomes anymore, and she wanted to focus on other things. When I suggested that we invest most of the inheritance and continue living on my salary as we always had, she went silent. For 2 days, she barely spoke to me. When she finally did, it was through passive-aggressive comments dropped like small bombs throughout our conversations. She mentioned how her college friend just bought a house with a pool. She pointed out that another couple we knew was driving a new luxury car. She looked at our modest living room and sighed like it was suffocating her. Then came the comment that cut deepest. We were arguing about finances, and she looked at me with cold eyes and said she did not marry me to live like we were still in our 20s. The words hung in the air between us. I realized in that moment that I had been ignoring a pattern that had been there all along. I thought back to our dating years. Lindsay always chose expensive restaurants and always seemed to forget her wallet. She never offered to split the cost of anything. I paid for every date, every trip, every gift. I told myself it was because I wanted to take care of her. But now I wondered if she had been taking care of herself all along. About a month after the inheritance news, I met up with my childhood best friend Derek for drinks. We had known each other since elementary school, and Derek was the kind of guy who would give you the shirt off his back without being asked. I trusted him more than almost anyone. We were sitting at a bar downtown, nursing beers and catching up. I told him about the inheritance and about how Lindsay had been acting. Derek got quiet. He stared at his glass for a long moment, before looking up at me with an expression I had never seen on his face before. He looked uncomfortable, almost pained. He said there was something he needed to tell me. Something he should have told me years ago but did not, because he thought it was just drunk talk and did not want to cause problems. My stomach dropped before he even started speaking. Derek told me that a few years back, before Lindsay and I got married, he was at a party where Lindsay was talking to her friends. He was not trying to eavesdrop, but he was standing close enough to hear their conversation. Lindsay was laughing about how my grandfather was loaded and how she was just waiting for the old man to pass away. She told her friends she was playing the long game. I felt like someone had punched me in the gut. The bar seemed to spin around me. Derek apologized over and over, said he did not know if it was serious or just idle gossip. He thought maybe she was joking. But now, with everything that was happening, he felt I needed to know. I wanted to deny it. I wanted to find some explanation that would make it not true. But the pieces were falling into place. Her eagerness about the inheritance, her impatience with my grief, her sudden demands and threats, it all made terrible sense. I told Derek I needed time to think. I drove home that night, in silence, my mind racing. I decided I would not confront Lindsay yet. I would watch. I would wait. I would gather more information before making any moves. Over the next few weeks, Lindsay's demands escalated. She pushed harder for joint accounts. She wanted me to add her name to the inheritance funds so she could have full access. When I hesitated, she accused me of not trusting her. She said married couples share everything, and asked what I was hiding from her. She started looking at houses without telling me, then showing me listings for properties priced at $700,000, $800,000. She had already picked out furniture in her mind. When I suggested something more modest, something we could afford on our regular incomes without touching the inheritance, she exploded. She called me cheap. She called me controlling. And then she played her trump card. She said maybe she had made a mistake marrying someone with no ambition. She said maybe she needed to reconsider the relationship. I recognized what she was doing. She was testing me, seeing if the threat of divorce would make me cave. I stayed calm. I did not give her the reaction she wanted. Instead, I said, I understood her concerns, and that I needed some time to think about our financial future. Lindsay switched tactics immediately. The next day, she was sweet again, apologizing for her outburst, blaming stress and emotions. She said she loved me, and just wanted us to build a life together. But her performance no longer fooled me. I could see the manipulation for what it was. And I started making plans of my own. The following Monday, I called Mr. Patterson and scheduled a private meeting at his office. I did not tell Lindsay where I was going. I told her I had a work meeting and would be home late. Mr.